Consumer law covers any type of transaction in which a consumer either buys or leases some type of service or product. You go buy a car and you have a problem with it. You have a problem with your landlord. You have a problem with your mortgage company. We really have to put our mind to each case to figure out what is the strategy to use with those particular circumstances. A lot of times we have people who are in desperate situations because they have no transportation, they're about to lose their home, they've been sued in court. So these are not just run-of-the-mill problems, but they come to us not because they've been hurt physically, but they've been hurt financially, they've been hurt mentally, they've been defrauded. I think it's important for people to know we give them honest advice about their problems. They can come and leave without ever hiring us, but now they've gone away with knowledge. The goal of Sanchez Law Firm is to ensure that when our clients come,
Hold on, I'm not live. I accidentally put it on mine.
Oh, yeah. I didn't just realize that. It's on your second.
It's going, hold on.
Oh,
I just took it off. And I just deleted it.
it's not where in the circle? No, because it doesn't. Aside from her, though, yes.
consumer law covers any type of transaction in which a consumer either buys or leases some type of service or product. You go buy a car and you have a problem with it. You have a problem with your landlord. You have a problem with your mortgage company. We really have to put our mind to each case to figure out what is the strategy to use with those particular circumstances. A lot of times we have people who are in desperate situations because they have no transportation, they're about to lose their home, they've been sued in court. So these are not just run-of-the-mill problems, but they come to us not because they've been hurt physically, but they've been hurt financially, they've been hurt mentally, they've been defrauded. I think it's important for people to know we give them honest advice about their problems. They can come and leave without ever hiring us, but now they've gone away with knowledge. The goal of Sanchez Law Firm is to ensure that when our clients come to us, that they feel thoroughly represented, that they know that we're on their side, and that we give them accurate information upon which to make choices. It's important that as we continue to grow our firm, that our clients know they have the fighting power with us to fight the other side and not just give up.
Good. Well, that.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sanchez Law Firm second Saturday seminar series. This month in November, we'll be covering consumer auto fraud. We do have some announcements at the end for upcoming events. And if you stay till the end, you'll be able to be entered into a raffle for a free Thanksgiving dinner. I will let my marketing coordinator, Alexis, talk to you about that at the end. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into what we have here. Just generally, so you know what's going to happen over the next hour, we're going to briefly talk about the different types of auto fraud. We'll talk about the consumer protection laws that address auto fraud, how you can recognize auto fraud, and then what remedies you may have as a consumer to deal with auto fraud here in Texas. Now, specifically, this will be Texas. There are some federal laws, but there are state laws that deal with consumer auto fraud, and those vary from state to state. So we are talking about consumer auto fraud in Texas. Generally, the reason we have these laws in Texas regarding auto fraud is because, you know, quite frankly, auto dealers have a shady reputation. Everyone makes fun of someone in terms of overselling by referring to them as a car salesman, especially a used car salesman. From our vantage point as consumer lawyers in Texas, we see a lot of unethical practices in the auto industry, more so in the used car industry than the new car industry. But nonetheless, there are unethical practices throughout the auto industry. These unethical practices lead to a lot of financial damages and mental anguish for people. You go thinking you're going to get a car, a good car that you need for work to take care of your transportation for your family, and it breaks down, you know, whether it's an hour later, 2 days later, or whatever. You buy a new car and you find out that it's a lemon because it keeps having the same type of problems over and over again. So it's important that when you do go try to purchase a car, that you protect yourself with knowledge, and that you try not to buy the car out of desperation. And if it doesn't meet, if you have any kind of red flags, that you walk away from the deal. I generally tell my clients and the public, try not to buy used cars from these small car lots that you see, you know, on every other corner. I usually recommend the large chains, although I know that's giving big business some money, but I'd rather have, you know, for example, AutoNation or CarMax sell me a used car because I think they have the financial wherewithal to withstand the claim and to honor a claim if there is a claim against them for something wrong with the car. These used car lots, a lot of their business is just putting in the money that you give them into other things. That money is gone, and usually they're operating on a deficit or just, you know, month by month, and so they don't actually have the money to withstand the claim if you bring one to them. So even though you may have a valid claim, to actually get paid on that claim would be very hard. It's important to know also what your rights are in terms of the Texas consumer protection laws. We do have a federal Odometer Act. We also have the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act. And then we have lemon law that deals with what to do with a new car that could potentially be declared a lemon by the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. I'd like to get into the different types of the main categories of different types of auto fraud that we see. The first one is an odometer rollback. Now, there is a federal odometer law that prevents this. And then in addition, under the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act, rolling back an odometer or having a false odometer reading is also a violation of state law. The question is how do you recognize odometer fraud? Okay? And how do you, what do you do about it? We'll get into some of the recognitions and remedies later, but that is a one type of category. So generally, when you buy a car, if the odometer is rolled back, the dealers or individuals selling the car will ask for a higher amount. So you're thinking you pay a certain amount for a vehicle that has 50,000 miles, but you're actually buying a vehicle that's 250,000 miles. There's a very big difference in the value of that car and whether you even buy that car to begin with. But people who are doing this, they're getting money from you that you may not have paid otherwise, and they certainly may be getting more money from you than you would have wanted to pay for that vehicle had you known the correct odometer reading. There are different ways that the odometer can take place, the odometer reads. Another major way of consumer auto fraud is title washing. And title washing occurs when there are marks against the title, such as a salvage vehicle or flooding, or just different, odometers readings not correct. And somehow that title then becomes sort of what we call a clean title. So that's why we refer to it as title washing, because you have a title that has some negative marks against it, that if you as a consumer would know that, you may not buy that car, or again, you may purchase it for a cheaper amount. But instead, you're presented with a clean title. And in Texas, we also can refer to clean titles such as blue titles, and then salvage titles as brown titles, because that's the different color paperwork that you see for these titles. But it is possible that people will do certain things to wash that title clean and then give you that title, and you would never know unless you did some hard research on that title history. So that's another one. The other thing is having a salvage vehicle sold without disclosing that to you. So again, a salvage vehicle in Texas usually has a brown title. However, if you don't know that there was a salvage to it, then you wouldn't know. Most vehicles that are insurance companies who do what you call it? What's it called, Doug? The insurance companies do a total. Total loss. Sorry, guys. So the total loss, when an insurance company does a total loss on the vehicle, then that vehicle is usually going to be a salvage vehicle at that point because it's a total loss. However, sometimes that doesn't happen. So you have to be careful for the salvage history of a vehicle. There's also disclosure violations. So, dealers and individual sellers don't tell you particular history. It may not rise to the level of a salvage vehicle, but you may think that this vehicle is totally perfect, and yet it was involved in an accident. And so there's no disclosure that there was a prior accident, no matter how minor. You may think that this vehicle has never been flooded, and what do you know? It was in the flood in Houston, and you just didn't know. There's all sorts of things that could be disclosed regarding a vehicle's condition or history. And if you're not told about that, that could be a violation of the law. Now, we will get into whether something is sort of just negligence versus whether something is actual fraud and intent. And then finally, there's just, unfair and deceptive practices that lead consumers astray. They mislead consumers. So those are the different types of auto kind of fraud claims that you have. You have odometer rollback, you have title washing, salvage fraud, you have disclosure violations, and you have unfair and deceptive practices. To combat these different types of auto fraud, Texas does have some consumer laws that can help you. The main one that we use as consumer lawyers here in Texas is the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act. It's otherwise known as the DTPA, and that is a consumer law that can actually help you with many types of different transactions, including but not limited to auto sales. So that prevents or that regulates a lot of consumer transactions, and if you have deceptive trade practices in the sale or purchase of a vehicle, that law can apply. In addition, you can have odometer rollback, as we talked about, is also illegal as well. The Deceptive Trade Practices Act does require a process, and so most people don't know this process. Most of the time, I would recommend that you hire an attorney to deal with the process, but generally speaking, there is a pre-suit demand letter that's required. That demand letter has to have all sorts of different things that are required by the law. And then if that demand letter has all those things, and then it's served properly on the defendant on the other side, the dealer or the seller or whatever, they have 60 days to respond to that letter. Now, we allow time for mail, so we usually give a couple weeks more after the deadline, but they have 60 days to respond. If they don't respond or you don't settle within that time, then you can go forward with a lawsuit and ask for attorney's fees in addition to your other damages. If you don't meet that deadline or that demand process, then when you do sue, the other side can ask for the judge to suspend the case for 2 months to allow that process to continue. Most of the time, that would be done when you're running against the deadline to actually file the lawsuit under the DTPA, which is 2 years. The other type of protection that we have, the main one for auto cases, is the lemon law provision. The lemon law really refers to new cars, and it has to be for something that it really is significant to the car. It can't just be, a minor scratch or just minor rattlers. So there's a way in Texas, there's an administrative process to file a claim with the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles and go through an administrative process by which ultimately the Texas DMV could declare that vehicle to be a lemon. There are different requirements under the lemon law. A lot of times the lemon law is something that you could do yourself without the help of an attorney, as long as you fill out the correct forms. But we can help you with that as well. Most of the time though, because it's a government process, people are willing to try that themselves and then come to us. Of course, you can still sue if you want to, but the lemon law is actually having it declared lemon is something that it's there set up by the government to try to make it easier for you to deal with the lemon law violations without having to hire an attorney or go to court. So just be mindful of that. These laws protect consumers because they give a legal recourse for consumers who have had bad dealings with auto sellers and auto dealers. If we didn't have these laws, then the auto industry would actually, I think, be even worse. Quite frankly, I'm not sure that these laws are strong enough because there are auto dealers that do this all the time. What they hope and pray for is that the consumer doesn't think enough about it to actually go seek out legal advice or legal help. There, especially in Texas, there's a lot of people who take advantage of people who are not citizens or not, quote, legal in this state. And so those people tend to be afraid to kind of report to the government, and these dealerships know that, and so they take advantage of these people, and they just, they do all sorts of things, knowing that these people most likely will not go report it because they're here illegally anyway. Technically, your status as a citizen should not matter, and it does not matter if you want to file a lawsuit. Even if you're not legal here, you can file a lawsuit and a claim against an auto dealer or seller for fraud. So that should not be a concern, but most people believe it is, and that is why they don't pursue these claims. And given the number of claims that are not pursued, basically the dealerships say, well, for every one person that pursues us, we're going to make money off of the 9 or 19 that don't pursue us or more. And so they're able to get away with this business. These laws, in addition to helping the consumers, hopefully they hold the dealerships accountable. Again, we've seen lots of these small car dealerships that are, I consider, mom and pop operations that don't really care. There's some operations that look small, but they're actually, they have a lot of different dealerships throughout the state. But when you look at their lots, you think it's just a single lot, and they're actually sort of corporate, but they still prey on you the same way. And it's best to seek a consumer attorney in Texas. There's very few of us here, and I'm one of the ones that we do it all over the state, and we're very specialized in what we do. But so if you have any problems regarding a vehicle, then that might be something that you should consider, is at least having a phone consultation with us. And then that way you could at least get some idea as to whether you have a claim and what you can do about it. Now we're going to get into the specifics of recognizing specific individual auto fraud. So as we talked about before, we have an odometer reading failures and misrepresentation. Most of the time in Texas, there's a form that you're supposed to fill out and includes the odometer reading. And that form can then be filed with the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. In addition, on the back of the title, there's a little disclosure regarding odometer. There are two choices, though. One will be that it's accurate, and one is I don't know. So when you're dealing with the seller, you want to make sure that you understand the difference between the two, because if the seller is saying they don't know, then they're not committing to the accuracy of the odometer reading, and that should be a red flag. Sellers should be able to go into a Carfax or Texas DMV history report to determine whether the vehicle that they bought, whether through a trade-in or an auction or whatever, has an accurate odometer reading. Now, of course, they're not the only owner, but for the most part, they should be able to say, well, this, based on our research, this looks accurate. If an owner is unwilling to commit to that, then that may be a red flag as to whether or not there's an odometer problem. What kind of things can you look for to know whether the odometer has been tampered with? Well, if you're looking at the old school odometer readings that are not electronic, if the numbers don't actually line up on the dials, if they're just not straight across, nice and perfect, that would be a sign of odometer tampering. People can go in and physically open up the dashboard and get screws and stuff and literally roll back the odometer. And most of the time, they're not very accurate in terms of lining everything up when they finally do that and put everything back together. So if the odometers look like they're uneven, that could be a sign that there's been some odometer tampering, because these vehicles are set up so that the numbers are perfectly even and all line up. If you have an electronic odometer, the problem is that there actually is a way for people to go into the computer system and change the odometer. So obviously you're not looking at whether numbers line up, but if the odometer reading looks too good to be true, considering the age and type of vehicle it is, then that is another indicator. So you want to be a smart consumer, and you want to look at those odometer readings and determine whether or not, a 10-year-old car that has, 15,000 miles on it, that would literally have to be sitting in the garage most of the time. You got to be careful about those vehicles. The saying that what looks too good to be true probably isn't true. So you definitely want to make sure that the mileage is probably accurate given the age of the vehicle and what the vehicle use was for. Sometimes you have vehicles that are barely driven. You have grandfathers and grandmothers who barely drive, and so they just sort of keep the vehicle in the garage. But if you have someone who probably is an Uber driver selling a vehicle for very low mileage, you might think twice about that, or a courier driver or something like that. You can also look at whether the condition of the vehicle is consistent with the mileage reading. If there's inconsistent wear and tear on the vehicle, that might be an indication that there's something up with the odometer. Okay, obviously we want to make sure that we are buying good cars to begin with, but to the extent that the wear and tear on the vehicle looks like it's too much for the odometer, that would be a sign. And most people don't look at this, but I would definitely try to get a pre-purchase inspection. They can tell you about that wear and tear that you may not see yourself. They can look at the tires. You know, if the people say that they've got new tires, but that tire thread is very small and looks like it's been used for 40,000 miles, even though they say they bought the tires last month, you know, that's an indication that there's something wrong. And if they can lie about the wear and tear, you know, who says that they can't lie about the odometer reading as well? If you look around the dashboard, especially for the older vehicles, but this may happen a little bit for the newer vehicles. If you see that there are missing screws or that the dashboard doesn't look right, you know, it looks uneven, there may be an indication that someone got tampered with the dashboard and got into the dashboard and just didn't put it back together correctly. As we all know, when you get a new car, you know, everything's done perfectly. So there shouldn't be anything wrong with the vehicle, you know, everything from the glass plate in front of the odometer and the dashboard should all be even with that. But if it's not even, or if it looks like there's some missing screws, especially in the older cars, then it may be that you have some evidence of odometer tampering, and you definitely want to follow up on that odometer tampering. And so again, you want to look for that. So those are different issues on how to recognize odometer tampering. Now, the other thing certainly is to look up reports regarding the vehicle's history. The DMV can offer you a report. The Texas DMV can offer you a report. You may have to pay for it, but considering what you're paying for a vehicle, it may be worth it to get the DMV report to show what all incidents of the DMV, transfer of ownership, mileage, and all that. If you don't want to do the DMV report, or you don't want to, you know, get that right away, the other thing is to get a Carfax. It is easy to look at a Carfax and see whether the odometer reading is consistent. Sometimes what we've seen, you know, Carfax that has one odometer disclosure that's out of whack with the others, especially if the odometer reading is less later on after one reading. So I think in one case we had a vehicle that was around, the odometer reading said it was around 200,000 miles. And then when our client bought it, it said around 115,000 miles. And so, you know, had the client looked at the Carfax report before she bought it, that would have been an indicator, hey, there's something wrong here. That doesn't mean that just because you don't buy a Carfax report that the dealer is not responsible, but these are ways to protect yourself. So you can get a DMV title report, you can get a Carfax report to look at these as well, even if you everything else looks good. That would be something I definitely would recommend for people to do. The second type of auto fraud that we talked about is title washing. So what is title washing? Title washing, again, is when those title marks on a title are taken off and somehow those marks disappear. Well, how did that happen? Most of the time it happens because the cards are coming from another state. And we've seen several examples of this where a car is sold to a Texas consumer, but is actually coming from another state. There are a lot of different states that will not honor the title marks of a Texas title. So when they are registered in another state, those title marks go away. And then when they come back into Texas, then it looks like they have a clean title. So whether the marks are loans or liens or ownership history or accident history, I mean, a lot of those are going to end up being taken off simply by moving from one state or another. The other thing is I think it still goes on a lot, but that is altering the physical title. So people will physically alter the document, and you know, I don't want to get into how, but you know, they can do certain things to alter the document, and you would never know. Back when we were, you know, back in the old days when there were typewriters, you know, people would, you know, sometimes use a typewriter erase ribbon to erase something and then type something over it. So they would just replace that on the title. So they can do that by physically altering the title and then giving you a title that had not been altered with any government, had not been taken to another state, but you think it's a good title, and you buy it, and then you end up finding out later that the title is inconsistent with the actual title. Again, you could always go to the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles and figure out the title issues even before you buy the vehicle. Some people will just simply apply for a new title. So they will say that they lost the title and, they won't honor, they won't disclose the things that are wrong with the vehicle. The government mainly relies on reporting services and owners to report the history of the vehicle. So if you do not actually report things accurately, then you can get away with having the government just give you a title that doesn't have anything. Because if you don't report that there was an accident, you don't report that there was damage or a bad odometer or anything, then those marks will fall away when you simply apply for a new title because the government doesn't know anything, doesn't know anything about it. So the past damage won't affect the new title that is issued. So those are some ways that you can guard against title washing. At least those are some of the ways that people do title washing. So they can, if it's from another state, be very careful. I think that a lot of the title washing cases that we have are clearly out of state titles. There's also the issue of the fact that if they delay in giving you the title for a long time, then there's usually something up with the title. Most reputable dealerships will give you the title within 60 days. That's why you get temporary plates. But if they're delaying the process of giving you the title and they're giving you temporary plates or tags after temporary tags, and they're not giving you the title, a lot of them are just hoping that you'll just stop and go away, right? But so a delay in the title work could be a problem. What we found is when clients have come to us regarding a long delay, again, a lot of the time it's because we find that there's been a loan against a lien against the vehicle that has not been disclosed, that the vehicle was stolen and sold and that wasn't disclosed, or it's coming from another state and they're having problems clearing the title with that state to then make it a Texas title. So those are some issues to deal with in terms of title washing. The next thing is understanding the fraud. So there are salvage fraud issues. Again, the most basic thing is that if you have a brown title, don't let anyone tell you that that's a good title, because a brown title is a salvage vehicle in Texas. If you have bought a vehicle that has been, there's been some indication to you that the vehicle is bought at auction, most of the time those auction vehicles are going to be salvage vehicles. If someone tries to get away with saying, well, we bought it at an auction, but it's a good, clear vehicle, blue title and everything, I would be very suspicious about that, because most of the time, by the time vehicles get to auctions, public auctions, those are salvage vehicles, because most people don't want to sell salvage vehicles on their lots if they're reputable. You can take a car that's been repossessed, for example, and then resell it on your lot, and that would still be a blue title. That would be a clean title. But if for some reason the vehicle is repossessed and ultimately sold at an auction, that could be an indication that the repossessor, the bank or the dealership or whoever, thought that there was something with that vehicle that made it not have a blue title, not have a clean title. So you definitely want to, I think the number one indicator for salvage fraud is to definitely look at the whether the car has been in auction. Again, look at your DMV reports, look at your Carfax reports. If there's indication of major accidents or major damage or flooding, and you still have a blue title, that's probably an indication of a salvage fraud, because in Texas, there are a lot of things that could cause a vehicle to be declared a salvage vehicle. The government's pretty good about making sure that, at least in theory, that consumers should know which vehicles are salvaged and which are not. Of course, people go through, all sorts of things to try to confuse you or defraud you. And then there are disclosure violations. And so, the disclosure violations are just things that they don't tell you about in the vehicle. They could be, anything from not telling you about accidents or minor floods or the history of the tires or whatever. There are two types of disclosure violations. There's the affirmative disclosure violations where they actually do a misrepresentation to you. So they actually lie about the vehicle status, whether it's a part or the vehicle's history or whatever. They tell you this is a garage kept car that's barely been driven, and it had a one owner, and you find out that it was a car in a company fleet, right? That had multiple owners, or it was a rental car that's now been determined end of life for the rental car company, and now it's being sold. That's a clear misrepresentation. The second type of disclosure violation is the omission. So they should tell you things that are major wrong with the car or things that they know about, and they fail to do it. So if they know the car has been in a major accident, even if you don't ask them, they should tell you. If they know the car has been flooded, and you don't ask them, they should still tell you. They don't have to tell you about every little thing, but things that they know about, they are required to tell you under Texas consumer laws. If they fail to tell you these major things, even though they're selling it as is or used, they could still get in trouble. So I know car dealerships like to use the as is language to be a blanket defense to whatever they do, but that is not the case, and that's not the way that the law is set up. So there are different types of disclosures that could be done that could be misrepresentations and then therefore hurt you. The next thing now, we're going to get into what your remedies are when you come across some type of auto fraud. In Texas, we basically have two types of remedies. We have legal court remedies, like a private cause of action, and then you have remedies in terms of dealing with some sort of government. Now, you can make a complaint to the Texas Attorney General's office. They do have a consumer protection division, and their job is to ensure that businesses are not doing bad business in Texas. They really are a public agency, and they're there for the public good. So most of the time, they're not there to privately represent you in your civil claim against the dealership or the seller. However, sometimes in their investigation with the dealership, you could be the beneficiary, and they could potentially resolve your problem by their investigation with the seller, and then the seller decides to enter into some sort of deal, and that deal could somehow involve giving you money, or taking the car back, or making repairs or whatever. So I think it is a good idea to go ahead and file a complaint with the Texas Attorney General's Office Consumer Protection Division. They do have different offices throughout the state. You can also look online, or again, the Texas Attorney General's Office has many different divisions. The one that most people know about is the Child Support Division. The one that people don't really know about is the Consumer Protection Division. They have attorneys that staff those divisions. There is a division office here in Houston. And so I would definitely encourage you to at least do that. Now, again, that's not necessarily a private remedy that's going to directly help you, but it is something to help get these businesses on the radar of the Texas government, because then they can go in and potentially do audits of their paperwork and their transactions and see if they've done this to many people. The other thing you could do is file a complaint with the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles. Most of the time, that's going to come in play when you're talking about the lemon law, because the lemon law in Texas requires that this be an administrative proceeding. It's designed so that you shouldn't have to go to court. So you can take care of this through the administrative process of filing a complaint. There's a particular form you file with the Texas DMV. And eventually there's going to be, a hearing where there's some sort of adjudication or decision made on whether that vehicle is declared a lemon or not. Now, that doesn't prevent you from still having a private cause of action, especially for misrepresentation and things like that. But if a vehicle, goes into the shop several times, there are different types of ways you can declare a vehicle a lemon. The most common one is that, there's like 4 times over a time period and it's in the shop for the same reason. If there's a substantial manufacturing defect, that's another issue. If there is a defect that's covered by the warranty, so there are things that you have to do in order to have a vehicle declared a warranty. And just so you know, it doesn't really cover used cars. It does cover new vehicles, including cars, trucks, motorcycles, ATVs, motorhomes, towable recreational vehicles, and neighborhood electric vehicles. But those vehicles must be covered by a manufacturer's written warranty. Some demo vehicles could still be considered new vehicles for purposes of this law. So you may have a demo vehicle that then is sold, and that demo vehicle could still be considered new as far as the public is concerned, even though it may have miles on it from the demo process. The lemon law does not cover repossessed vehicles, doesn't cover non-travel vehicles, boats, or farm equipment. It doesn't also cover defects that don't substantially impair the use of the vehicle. So again, with lemon law, we're talking about major defects. If you hear some minor rattling and it's not a major defect, lemon law doesn't cover it. If your radio sounds fuzzy because the speakers aren't clear or whatever, those are not going to be major defects that fall into the lemon law. So it has to be a defect that substantially impairs the use of that vehicle. What you can do is you can file a form with the Texas DMV and go through that process to determine, have the DMV determine if that vehicle is a lemon. If that vehicle is a lemon, then you can potentially be able to get that car bought back and get your money back. How long do you have to file a lemon law claim? You do have, it's up until the end of the warranty. So it's the earlier of one of these 3 things. So the expiration of the express warranty that you're given, 24 months after purchase, or 24,000 miles after the vehicle is delivered to you. So whichever is earliest, that would be the time that you have to file that claim. A lemon law claim, of course, must be filed within 6 months of whatever that timeline is. Okay, so if you get a vehicle that is 24 months old, that doesn't mean that in 24 months you're somehow screwed. It just means that you have 6 months after one of those events to file it. So if you got a 24,000 mile vehicle, a 24-month vehicle, or the warranty, you have 6 months after the end of that deadline to file your claim. If you win, you could potentially get all sorts of things like a refund or a replacement. Most of the time, that should be up to the DMV to determine what it is that you would potentially get regarding that lemon law claim. You can also file a private claim, but a private claim is not necessarily the remedy for lemon law. So lemon law is specifically set up so that so the DMV can declare that vehicle a lemon. You're not going to be able to go to court and say, okay, I want to prove the same things in the administrative hearing and have that vehicle declared a lemon, because it has to be declared a lemon by the government agency, not by a court. So that is something that you need to really remember. So in addition to filing with the Attorney General's office or filing with the DMV, of course, you have a private right to cause of action. Most of the time, it's going to require that you have what we call a pre-suit demand letter. Under the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act, you have to serve the other side with what we call a 60-day letter that gives a lot of different things that will go into that letter. And then they have 60 days to respond and try to settle with you. And if you don't, then you can go into court. Now, if we find that there are things that are done intentionally or knowingly, there could be extra damages. So we can have, if your economic damages are really what's called your money losses, you could potentially get treble damages for your money losses. The DCPA also covers mental anguish. We all have a problem with, especially if this is your only vehicle, you've had a lot of things to do with the vehicle that now has been missold and misrepresented to you. You potentially have mental anguish, and you can potentially, if it's found to be done knowingly or intentionally, that you can then potentially get treble damages. Of course, your attorney's fees can be recouped. Some people will do these cases on a contingency fee. Most of the time, you're not going to find a contingency fee attorney going after a small car lot, because those scammers don't have the money to pay the attorneys at the end. We end up getting a judgment and never get paid, because these are just mom and pop operations that can't afford to pay off the judgment. So, most of the time, if you're going to find a contingency fee attorney at all, and that's very rare in this line of business, that would have to go against the major dealership who could potentially pay that claim out. The thing about mental anguish in Texas is that there's sort of a high burden. Now, not, it doesn't necessarily require by law that you have to go see a therapist or a psychologist or psychiatrist, but unless it's sort of severe, it's not just inconvenience, mere inconvenience. It's not being angry that you got duped, right? It has to be truly mental anguish at what was caused, as a result of this fraud. If you've got, two vehicles and you've got a third vehicle that someone represented you on, but you can still travel and do your job and whatever you're going to do anyway, then that's probably not going to get you a lot of mental anguish. But if you buy a car and it's your only car and now you're missing work, and the kids aren't able to get to their softball practices and things like that, I mean, there could be a potential where you could truly have some mental anguish based upon the fact that you have an auto fraud. But again, you're gonna have to show those facts. So that's a factual issue that's gonna have to be determined. Now, in our pre-suit demand letters under the DTPA, we usually do ask for mental anguish. You cannot ask for those extra damages, those treble damages, in a DTPA demand letter. The object of the law is to give the person who's receiving the demand letter the chance to settle the claim without, bumping up into those higher categories. So it says, hey, if you settle it now, we're giving you this opportunity about making the consumer give you this letter. It's your opportunity to settle this. If you don't settle it, you may be subject to higher damages if there has to be a court case. So even though, there is the availability of extra damages, those are not damages that we would claim in a pre-suit demand letter. We would hope that they would do the right thing and try to settle with this. Some do and some don't, and they don't, and we think we can show intentional or knowingly, most of the time we can, then we will go ahead and add those extra damages as part of what we want in the lawsuit. I think what I want to do now is sort of give you some examples of what we've encountered in terms of auto fraud. So we have one of the ones is what I told you earlier about the interstate transaction. So we have a person who lives in Oklahoma who bought a truck from a dealership in Houston. Okay, and that he was told to he made the payment and he's paid the insurance, and the vehicle still is not given to him. Now, I would say that might just be an outright theft, but certainly it's going to be an issue as there's been, a credit union finance a loan. Our client has had to pay several months of loan payments and several months of insurance payments, and the dealership keeps making excuses as to why they can't deliver the truck. I would never, I always tell clients and the public in general, don't ever buy a vehicle on the internet, especially in another state, if you don't have someone who's actually going to inspect the vehicle before you purchase it. We had some other people who did sort of the same thing regarding a California and Texas transaction. And if you don't have someone actually going to inspect the vehicle and say, hey, it's okay, then you can go forward. Then you're just leaving yourself up to whatever representations are being made by the seller. And if the seller is deceiving you, then that's a problem. If you're buying a vehicle, it doesn't make sense not to spend a little bit of extra money, even if you can't find a friend or someone to do it that you trust. Hire a local mechanic in that area to do a pre-purchase inspection. Mechanics know what they're doing when they look at this. These are routine kind of inspections. They can check the electronics, they can check the wear and tear, they can check the tires, everything, and then they can give you a report. Now, a lot of times sellers who are shady do not want to subject their vehicle to such an inspection. If you ask them, can I have an inspection by a mechanic done before I agree to purchase it? If they say no, more than likely there's something going on there and you do not want to purchase that vehicle. So in our case, our client, who actually is in Oklahoma but has a Texas claim against a Texas dealership, they never got the truck and they're still having to spend money on the vehicle. In another case that we had a vehicle that was a Texas vehicle that was sold, but we learned after he hired us that the title actually was stuck in New Jersey, I think New Jersey or New York. And there was some indications that this sort of title washing was an issue because it wasn't a clean title. I think they were trying to deal with a lien that they had not disclosed at the time that they purchased the vehicle. So they were trying to deal with the loan company or whoever had the lien on the vehicle, trying to clear that up, and they were not successful in doing it. And so they never provided the titles because they could never provide a clean title. We had another case where we had and this is regards to odometer tampering, where the person went to the dealership and was the contract stated that the odometer reading, was 125,000 miles, and that's what it looked like on the vehicle. But then when she went to go sell the vehicle, again, she didn't do her proper sort of what we call investigation before buying the vehicle. When she went to go sell the vehicle, that car lot who was going to offer her something for that vehicle, they did run a Carfax report, and they showed that the vehicle, instead of having 125,000 miles, had 229,000 miles. So it was more than 100,000 miles off on the odometer. And it was actually known at the time that she purchased it. So it wasn't something that was done after she purchased it. If she had bought the Carfax report, then she would have been able to determine that there was a discrepancy before she bought the vehicle. Now, a lot of times, consumers will ask the dealership to show me the Carfax report. And that's better than nothing. But again, you're trusting that the dealership is going to give you an accurate report. Again, for whatever the Carfax report might cost, whether it's $18 or more than that, it's better for you to get your own report rather than to rely on the seller giving you a report, because you're still relying on the seller to give you this information. So if you can get your own DMV report and get your own Carfax report, that would be better. And so the thing with this client that had this discrepancy is clearly the dealership that she bought it from should have known that, the car had a bad odometer reading. A lot of times what they will say is that, well, we didn't know, right? We didn't, but your dealership, it seems like even though it's not legally required, right? It's not legally required to do anything, but most car dealerships and reasonable car dealership would have looked at the vehicle history to determine whether the representations it was making to the public at that point were accurate. And so, we hope that dealerships will look at the DMV report or pull a Carfax report. Understand that Carfax also is not a government report. It's not, it's just a private company selling information, and that information on the report is only as good as the information it's given. Not every time a car goes into a shop for repairs is that reported to Carfax, right? There's no law that says you must report this to Carfax. Carfax is a private entity, and it wouldn't do that. And the same thing with the DMV. Like I told you at the beginning, the information in these reports is only as good as the information that's been given. And you have people who purposely hide that information or mischaracterize or misrepresent that information, and that affects the value and validity of those reports. The last thing with that last example is when the vehicle, the dealership that sold our client that vehicle, they had the odometer tampering. What they said is they'd be willing to give her money back only if they got the car back and then when they resold it. Right, but that's not, they already had the money that she gave them. Again, but this is a small car dealership who already used that money. They didn't have the money to give back to her. And so the only way they could think of to try to make up to it is, when we sell this vehicle, we'll give you back the money. But how can you trust someone who's already made that misrepresentation to you to begin with? Those are a couple of the things that we do. So what do I advise you to do to try to help yourself in consumer auto fraud cases? How do you avoid auto fraud in Texas? The number one recommendation I have is to do a pre-purchase inspection. Most reputable mechanics and car shops know what that is. They have a standard set of diagnostics that they run and things that they look at to determine, a vehicle. Again, you pay them for it, so there's no reason for them to, try to lie about it, because you don't even have the vehicle yet. So they're not trying to upsell you on some type of repair service because you don't even own the vehicle. So there's no sense in trying to upsell you on that. So most repair shops are going to be accurate when they give you a pre-purchase inspection. Now, the thing is that many dealerships obviously will not let you do a test drive to a mechanic and leave it with the mechanic for a couple hours and then drive it back. But there are also mechanics who will go to the car dealership lots. And again, if a car dealership refuses to allow your mobile mechanic to go to the lot to check out the vehicle, that may be a sign. I think what we're going to, what we're planning on for the new year is we're going to develop a pre-inspection purchase list, a pre-purchase inspection list that we're going to make available to consumers. And we're going to, so you have that with you at all times. And when you want to go buy a car, you can kind of go down the line and say, okay, what should I check? What should I check? What should my mechanic check? And then hopefully that will give you some information and knowledge to use when you go purchase a car and try to avoid these transactions, these auto frauds. The other thing is do things in writing. A lot of times people do things verbally. Facebook Marketplace and some of these other online marketplaces, there are things that are done verbally between people all the time. They go meet up somewhere in a lot, and they get the money, they exchange the car. The person says, okay, I will give this car to you. I'll give the title to you later. We had one case where the person who sold the car was not the owner of the car, right? It ended up being a false sale, but guess what? Our client never actually got the government issued ID of the person they were dealing with. So they didn't know that the person they were dealing with wasn't the owner of the car. If you're doing these kind of individual transactions, which I encourage you not to do, but if you do it, make sure that the other person seems reputable. And also make sure you get proof of who they say they are. We've had people go to someone's home and it looks like, oh, they live there or whatever. And turns out, they didn't live there. It was a friend's house or whatever. You have to be careful about who you deal with. The issue with the written documents is also to understand what you're signing. A lot of times you go to these dealerships, especially in this day and age, you will get a little signature pad for you to sign. You don't actually see the entire document. Either you don't see the document, you have some salesperson or finance person explaining to you what that information is, and then you sign off on something, even though you rely on what they tell you. You actually never see what it is you're signing other than that little signature block. Or they have these documents electronically on the screen, and they kind of rush through the explanations, and they never give you the time to actually read them. And especially if you've been at the dealership for several hours, I think it's a tactic of bad dealerships to keep you in their dealership for a few hours to get you tired. So by the time you get to the paperwork, you just want to leave. So you're trying to rush through the paperwork so you can walk out the door. Don't fall for that. If they're taking too long and you feel like you're not in a right frame of mind to make a good decision, just walk out and tell them, you'll come back tomorrow when you're fresh. We can go through it again. If the vehicle's not there, then it wasn't meant to be. But don't sign a deal at the end of the day or after several hours and you're tired and you're not really thinking properly. The other thing is that they don't print out the paperwork to give it to you. They're not willing to print it out so that you can actually see it when you walk out of the dealership. We've had clients tell us they've been given paperwork on thumb drives, that the paperwork will be emailed, but only later, right? So they say, well, we'll email it to you tonight. Go ahead and take the car now. And then our clients open up the email or open up the thumb drive, and they realize the price of the price that they're paying for, the price that was financed is very different. I think we got an ongoing case right now where we have a client who was told that they were buying a vehicle for $60,000 plus interest and stuff, and come out to $75,000, but yet the actual price that they paid was $75,000 plus interest. So they were definitely given a mistake, misrepresentation. Sometimes that's because they're selling you extra warranties that they don't tell you cost money. They're selling you extra services or extra things on the vehicle, extra protection plans. They basically upsell you. So by the time that you actually see the paperwork, you're actually spending a lot more money. And so I hope that this session, we're now about out of time, but I hope this session is giving you a high level overview of auto fraud. We do have some upcoming events and initiatives from our firm. Do you want to come up?
Sure.
Okay, so we're gonna have Alexis come up and tell you about some of the things that we're doing, including our food drive, our toy drive, and next month's seminar. But
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you everyone for joining. We've been working really hard to get people on here, so I'm really excited to see people jump on. So the upcoming events that we have our food drive currently going on. The last day to donate is going to be November 17th. You can drop items off here in our office, or if you need to schedule a pickup, you can email me at alexis@sanchoslawfirm.com, and we can go ahead and schedule for any items to be picked up. We also have our toy drive that is currently going on, and the last day for donations for that will be December 18th. Same procedure. If you'd like to bring it in our office, you can. If not, I'd be more than happy to schedule a pickup to go pick up those items. Our next seminar is going to be December 9th, the second Saturday of December, and it's going to be on landlord-tenant disputes. So make sure you join us. Yeah.
so everybody, in the future, we may make these seminars only virtual. We're here in Houston, but we do cover the entire state. And so whether you have food or toys you want to donate and you want to get them to us from wherever you're at, we'll be happy to take those. I know sometimes it's difficult for people to come on a Saturday morning, but I do want to thank our Chief Marketing Officer, Alexis, for being able to put these seminars together. We are thinking about potentially having a consumer law school next year, as well as a consumer real estate school, law school next year. So we're thinking about putting these seminars together in a way that will guide you through different areas of the law and help you make you a better consumer. And if you graduate from quote the law school, then we'll give you a certificate or something that you can put up there, but to give you information and knowledge so that you can be a better consumer. Because as much as we can do, we're always going to have people who take advantage of our clients, but we're also here to make sure that you're a better consumer and a better real estate purchaser or landowner. Thank you and have a great day.
Don't give away.
Oh, sorry, we got a giveaway.
Yes, we didn't forget. Don't worry. So thank you, like I said, for everyone that's joining. We also actually, before I draw the next one, we are having another giveaway for Christmas. We're giving away 5 Christmas dinners. That one you do have to send me an email on why you or someone deserves this dinner. So I'll probably announce the deadline for that, but we still have some time. So if you know anyone or you would like to join that giveaway, send me an email, alexis@sanchoslawfirm.com, a video giving why you or someone else should get that. Okay, here we go. Done. We're lucky. Again, you must be present to win. So Seth Fuller, you present? I'm going to check my phone. Make sure Seth Fuller, you are a winner. You can either comment or wave to see if you're on. If not, we are going to pull the next person that is on. Seth Fuller.
You can see the participants.
I can. Well, not a list of them.
Yeah, Zoom does it.
It's not on Zoom though. This one's on here. He was on here. Seth Fuller. Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm gonna pull one more. Okay, next one. Chastity Gutierrez. Are you on? Give you a couple seconds to claim it if you are on. You want me to pull another one? Yeah. All right. No claim. Ted, do I mean it? Oh, actually, Chastity did claim it. She waved. Okay, so congratulations. You are our Thanksgiving dinner giveaway person. Okay, well, thank you guys very much. We'll see you next time.